You were taught something that sounds noble, but quietly destroys you. From an early age, you were rewarded for being agreeable, for being polite, for being understanding. You were praised for your patience, your generosity, your willingness to give more than you receive. And slowly, without realizing it, you internalized a rule that was never spoken out loud. If you are kind enough, the world will be kind back to you. But life did not unfold that way. Instead, you noticed something disturbing. The more accommodating you became, the more people took liberties. The more forgiving you were, the more boundaries were crossed. The more you tried to be liked, the less you were respected. And at some point, confusion turned into quiet resentment. You started asking yourself a dangerous question. If kindness is such a virtue, why does it seem to cost me so much? This is not a coincidence. It is not bad luck. And it is not because you were surrounded by unusually cruel people. It is because you were taught half a truth, and half a truth is more dangerous than a lie. The world does not run on moral intentions. It runs on incentives, perceptions, and power dynamics. Niceness, when unbacked by strength, is not interpreted as virtue. It is interpreted as availability. And availability invites use. Human beings are not wired to respect what comes easily. We are wired to respect what has weight, what resists, what has consequences. When something is always accessible, always forgiving, always accommodating, the subconscious mind assigns it a low value, not consciously, not maliciously, automatically. This is where the kindness paradox begins. You believe you are signaling goodness, but what you are often signaling is lack of leverage. And leverage, whether we like it or not, is the currency of respect. Consider how people treat time. When someone is always available, messages them back instantly, rearranges their schedule to accommodate others, their time becomes cheap. Not because they are bad people, but because scarcity creates value and abundance destroys it. The same rule applies to emotional availability, forgiveness, and compliance. When you constantly explain yourself, apologize, soften your boundaries, and accommodate discomfort to keep the peace, you teach others something very specific: that crossing you is safe, that pushing you has no cost, that your limits are negotiable. And once people learn that lesson, they don't forget it. This is why disrespect rarely begins with open hostility. It begins with small tests, interruptions, jokes at your expense, last-minute cancellations, requests that ignore your time, subtle dismissals. These are not accidents, they are probes. And your reaction answers the only question that matters: can I do this again? If you laugh it off, explain yourself, overcompensate, or retreat, the answer is yes. And so, the behavior escalates. This is not because people are evil. It is because human beings constantly map hierarchies. We are social animals. We assess strength, boundaries, and consequence instinctively. And when someone consistently absorbs pressure without pushing back, they are unconsciously placed lower in the hierarchy. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He was not interested in how people should behave. He was interested in how they actually behave. And his insight was simple, brutal, and enduring. People are loyal when it benefits them, respectful when it is necessary, and moral when it is convenient. This is why he warned that love alone is unstable. Love depends on obligation, and obligation breaks under pressure. Respect, however, is preserved by consequence. Consequence does not require affection, it requires clarity. When people know there's a cost to crossing you, they adjust. When there's no cost, they experiment. The modern world romanticizes kindness as an absolute good. It teaches you that being firm is rude, that boundaries are selfish, that saying no requires justification. And so, you learn to explain yourself endlessly. You soften your refusals. You apologize for existing. You dilute your decisions with disclaimers. And every time you do, you weaken your position. Explanation is not clarity, It is defense. The moment you explain, you frame yourself as the one who must be understood, accepted, or forgiven. You place the other person above you as the judge of your legitimacy. Power does not operate from that position. People who are respected rarely explain themselves. They state, they decide, they move, and others adjust. Not because they are cruel, but because certainty creates gravity. Indecision invites negotiation. Explanation invites challenge. Think carefully about the people you respect, not the ones you like, the ones you respect. Do they over-explain? Do they apologize excessively? Do they seek approval for their boundaries? Or do they act with a quiet finality that leaves little room for debate? Respect is not demanded. It is implied through behavior. This is where many well-intentioned people get trapped. They confuse kindness with self-erasure. They believe that being good means being harmless, but harmlessness is not virtue. It is simply a lack of power. A person who cannot say no is not kind. They are constrained. A person who cannot walk away is not loyal. They are dependent. And dependence erodes respect faster than almost anything else. True kindness requires choice, and choice requires options. If you are only kind because you are afraid of conflict, abandonment, or disapproval, your kindness is not generosity. It is a survival strategy. Others can feel this. Even if they cannot articulate it, they sense the imbalance. They sense that you are giving from fear, not from abundance. And fear never commands respect. This is why the nice person often becomes invisible, overlooked for promotions, taken for granted in relationships, used as emotional labor, relied on but not valued, present but not prioritized. They become useful, not respected. And usefulness without leverage is exploitation waiting to happen. There's another layer to this paradox that is even more uncomfortable. When you repeatedly suppress your own needs to accommodate others, resentment accumulates. You tell yourself you are being mature, understanding, above it, but inside, something hardens. This resentment leaks out in subtle ways: passive-aggressive comments, sarcasm, withdrawal, emotional distance. Others feel it. They sense the mismatch between your words and your internal state. And this creates distrust. People do not respect what feels inauthentic. And suppressed anger is one of the most palpable forms of inauthenticity. Carl Jung called this the shadow. The parts of yourself you were taught to suppress in order to be acceptable. Anger, ambition, desire for control, capacity for confrontation. When these parts are denied, they do not disappear. They go underground. And what goes underground gains power. A person who denies their shadow becomes unpredictable, anxious, and weak. A person who integrates it becomes grounded, calm, and formidable. This does not mean becoming aggressive or cruel. It means becoming capable of aggression and choosing when not to use it. That distinction is everything. A wolf that chooses to lie down is respected. A rabbit that cannot bite is not. The paradox is that the more you try to be liked, the less seriously you are taken. The more you prioritize harmony over truth, the less stable your relationships become. The more you avoid discomfort, the more discomfort accumulates. Respect does not grow from appeasement, it grows from clarity. Clarity of boundaries, clarity of standards, clarity of consequence. When you remove consequence from your interactions, you remove structure. And without structure, relationships decay. This is why Machiavelli's ideas feel uncomfortable. They strip away comforting illusions. They force you to confront the fact that the world is not a moral classroom. It is a strategic environment, and those who refuse to see it that way are not spared by their innocence. They are punished by it. The kindness paradox is not telling you to abandon compassion. It is telling you to anchor it in strength. Kindness without strength is submission. Strength without kindness is tyranny. But strength first, kindness second, creates respect. And respect is what makes kindness sustainable. If people know you can walk away, your presence gains weight. If they know you can say no, your yes becomes meaningful. If they know crossing you has consequences, they treat you carefully. This is not manipulation, it is alignment with reality. The world does not reward those who sacrifice themselves endlessly. It rewards those who know when to stop sacrificing, who protect their time, who defend their standards, who choose their generosity instead of leaking it. And once you understand this, you begin to see your past differently. You see that many of your frustrations were not caused by others being unfair, but by you being unclear, by you teaching people how to treat you through silence, compliance, and explanation. This realization hurts, but it also liberates, because it means respect is not something you must beg for. It is something you can cultivate, slowly, quietly, through consistent behavior. And that begins with one uncomfortable shift, prioritizing self-respect over being liked. Once you begin to see the kindness paradox clearly, something uncomfortable happens. You start noticing patterns you were blind to before. Conversations replay in your mind, moments where you swallowed your words, situations where you felt disrespected but chose silence, not out of wisdom, but out of fear of disruption. And the truth settles in slowly. Respect was not taken from you. It was surrendered. This is not meant to shame you. Shame keeps people frozen. Understanding sets them free. The goal here is not to turn you into someone cold or hostile. The goal is to turn you into someone solid. Because solidity changes everything. When a person is solid, they no longer leak energy through over-explaining, over-apologizing, or over-giving. Their presence feels contained, intentional, grounded, and people respond to that immediately, often without knowing why. This is why silence is so powerful. Not performative silence, not passive silence, but deliberate silence. Silence that signals confidence rather than avoidance. When you stop rushing to fill gaps in conversation, others begin to fill them for you. They reveal their assumptions, their insecurities, their intentions. Silence turns the spotlight outward. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence because silence removes the illusion of control. Talking feels like control, explaining feels like safety. But both are often forms of emotional leakage. Power's not loud, power's still. This is where many people misunderstand Machiavelli. They think he advocates deception for its own sake. He does not. He advocates restraint, the ability to withhold, the ability to wait, the ability to let others expose themselves while you remain unreadable. Unreadability is not dishonesty. It is protection. When people know exactly how you feel, what you want, and where your limits are at all times, you become predictable. And predictability is vulnerability. This is why emotional overexposure is so costly. It gives others a map to your leverage points. Once someone knows what triggers you, they can provoke you. Once they know what you fear, they can threaten you. Once they know what you crave, they can withhold it. This is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. Strong individuals do not broadcast their inner world indiscriminately. They choose carefully who earns access. Not everyone deserves the same level of transparency. Trust is built over time, not given freely. And this principle applies everywhere, in friendships, in families, in workplaces, in romantic relationships. The person who reveals everything immediately often believes they are being authentic. But authenticity without discernment is self-sabotage. True authenticity is alignment between inner truth and outer discipline. You do not need to lie. You need to filter. This filtering creates something rare in modern life: psychological distance. Distance allows perspective. Perspective allows strategy. And strategy allows you to move through the world intentionally rather than reactively. Reaction is the enemy of respect. When you react emotionally, you surrender control of the frame. You allow the other person's behavior to dictate your internal state. This is why reactive people are so easy to manipulate. Push the right button, get the desired response. A person who can feel emotion without being ruled by it becomes very difficult to control. This is what Machiavelli meant by self-mastery. Power over others begins with power over yourself, not repression, regulation. Regulation allows you to choose when to engage and when to disengage, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to be generous and when to withhold. Most people do the opposite. They give automatically and then resent it. They agree impulsively and then regret it. They speak before thinking and then try to undo the damage with more words. Words cannot undo what words created. This is why explanation often weakens rather than strengthens your position. The moment you explain, you invite evaluation. You place yourself on trial. You ask for permission to exist as you are. Respect does not come from being understood. It comes from being consistent. Consistency is intimidating because it removes ambiguity. When your actions match your standards over time, people stop testing you. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are reliable in a deeper sense, reliable in enforcing your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. A boundary is not saying, "I don't care." It is saying, "I care enough to protect what matters." And what matters most is your time, your energy, and your attention. Once you begin to protect these things, something interesting happens. The people who only benefited from your availability start to drift away. They become frustrated, confused, sometimes angry. This is a good sign. It means the relationship was never built on mutual respect. It was built on access, and when access is removed, the illusion collapses. Do not chase these people. Do not explain yourself to them. Let them go. What remains will be smaller but stronger. Fewer relationships, but deeper ones. Less noise, more clarity. This transition phase is uncomfortable. You will feel guilt. You will feel selfish. You will feel as if you are doing something wrong. This is conditioning speaking. You were trained to associate self-denial with virtue, but virtue without self-respect is unsustainable. Eventually, it turns into bitterness or collapse. Machiavelli understood that stability requires firmness, whether in a state or a soul. A system without enforcement decays. A person without boundaries dissolves. This does not mean becoming rigid. It means becoming intentional. Intentional with your yes, intentional with your no, intentional with your silence. Silence, when used correctly, does more than words ever could. It forces others to adjust to you rather than you adjusting to them. It creates space. And space is where power lives. This is why the most influential people often speak the least. They do not waste words on convincing. They let reality speak for them. Outcomes speak louder than arguments. Results justify everything. Words justify nothing. This principle is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. You can no longer hide behind good intentions. You are judged by what you enforce, not what you mean. And this is where respect finally begins to grow, not because you demand it, but because you embody something rare, self-respect without apology. When you stop negotiating your worth, others stop questioning it. When you stop explaining your decisions, others stop debating them. When you stop overgiving, others stop overtaking. This is not about dominance, it is about alignment. Alignment between who you are and how you act. The kindness paradox dissolves when kindness becomes a choice rather than a compulsion. You can still be compassionate, you can still be generous. But now it comes from abundance, not fear. From strength, not avoidance. And that kind of kindness feels different. It feels grounded. It feels calm. It feels unmovable. People sense it, and they respond accordingly, not with entitlement, but with respect.